Hey, what's up? Welcome back. Today, I'm sharing something with you that completely changed my approach to fitness for both myself and my clients, and I know it will for you too. And that is the game-changing concept of utilizing fitness seasons to get optimal results. And if you're asking, what is a fitness season? It is just a focused, intentional phase of your health and fitness journey where you're prioritizing a specific goal. And we'll get into all of fitness seasons and how we utilize these later in this episode. But just like seasons of the year, each fitness season has its specific purpose, and your body needs to move through different seasons to be able to create real and sustainable change. So instead of trying to do everything at once or living in a constant fat loss phase or a constant dieting phase, which usually leads to a plateau, fitness seasons can help you align your training, your nutrition, and your mindset to support what your body needs most in that season. And of course, we are going to talk about fitness seasons, and I'm going to give you all the tea. But before we get into that, I want to just talk a little bit about why always focusing on fat loss is keeping you stuck. No, fat loss is not bad. We don't want to demonize being in a fat loss phase or being in a deficit or wanting to lose weight. But what is a problem is chasing fat loss 24/7, 365, and expecting that your body is always ready to lose weight. People are often confused when I tell them you need to earn a deficit. You can't just jump into a deficit and expect your body to be ready for it. And when you are living in fat loss mode or living in a chronic deficit, your metabolism will slow down. It does this because it's trying to protect you. Your stress hormones, your sex hormones, your thyroid hormones all get out of whack. You often feel tired, hungry, and cranky all the time, or alternatively, maybe you never feel hungry, and your body starts resisting change and you start plateauing. So instead of living in this cycle and being on the perpetual fat loss wheel and getting frustrated with yourself, I'm going to teach you a better way. So there are 4 phases that we're going to talk about today, and I am going to talk about what each one is, why it's important, and how you should know when you should be in it. So the first phase, and in my personal opinion, this is the most important phase, is what I call a metabolic priming or a metabolic restoration phase. And a tool that we use within this phase is called a reverse diet. And that's something that you might have heard before. This is step 1 for so many women, and the step that a lot of women skip and causes them to have problems later on, especially high-performing, high-achieving women. If you feel like you've been dieting for years, like if you can't even remember a time where you didn't have a fat loss goal and were trying to lose weight, this is 100% going to be where you need to start. And this is also really important for my women who are unintentionally under-eating, skipping meals due to being busy at work, right? A lot of high-performing ambitious women, because we're so busy and on the go with our career, like we often skip meals and we don't eat enough. So this is going to be the first step that you need to focus on. Now, of course, like I said, a huge focus in this phase is a reverse diet, which means gradually increasing your calories over a period of time to be able to increase your metabolic rate, right? Your baseline calories that your body functions off of for your metabolism, increasing that so that you have a higher baseline to pull from when you do go into a fat loss phase. You're also going to want to be focusing on low impact strength training in this phase, reducing stress and giving your body what it needs. The ultimate goal of this phase is to restore your health. We're focusing on repairing your metabolism, restoring your energy level, balancing your hormones, supporting your gut health, right? And really getting you to an optimal place with your health so that your body is primed and ready to move into that fat loss phase when we want to pull the trigger. And the way that you're going to know if this phase is for you is if you've been stuck at low calories and your weight is not budging, you're not seeing any change, you are at a very clear plateau. This is going to be what you need first, not another diet. Also, if you don't track your food and you are intentionally moving more and you're still not seeing progress, again, this is likely the phase that you need to focus on. And lastly, there's a whole host of symptoms that are usually red flags that this is where you need to start. This is going to look like chronically tired, right? You're going to have low energy, brain fog, headaches, being really irritable or moody or on edge. You get really bad periods or really bad PMS. You have trouble sleeping or staying asleep at night. Chronic hunger, chronic cravings, or complete lack of hunger, and you feel like you never feel hungry. These are all red flag signs that this is the phase that you need to be focusing on. You need to be in a health phase, a metabolic restoration, or a metabolic priming phase first before you are moving into a fat loss phase. The next phase I want to talk about is the build phase. And I love this phase. This is honestly probably my favorite phase. And I think also way too many women skip this phase. This is because of fear of gaining weight. So many women are terrified to gain more weight that they completely avoid anything to do with this phase. And this is the phase that you actually want to move into next after your metabolism is primed and healthy, opposed to just jumping into another deficit right away. This is where you're going to build muscle and you're going to build shape. If you want that lean, tone-defined body that has curves on all the right places, you do not want to skip this phase. 9 out of 10 times, I see women push to go into a fat loss phase right away after we finish a metabolic restoration phase, and they are not happy with their results because even though they do lose fat, they do not have the shape that they were expecting to have underneath the fat. If you have never intentionally spent time building muscle, and by me saying intentional time building muscle, I don't mean just lifting weights and being in the gym. I'm talking about training with the intention to build muscle, training to failure, really pushing your progressive overload, eating in a caloric surplus, and really recovering properly. If you have not done that for a prolonged period of time, you have never intentionally tried to gain muscle. So you are probably going to be very surprised when you actually do lose fat and the shape underneath that fat is not what you were expecting. The terminology that you may have heard of that would be conducive to this is being skinny fat, right? And the problem is because you don't have that lean muscle underneath, that shape, that definition, that toned look, right? That firmness, it's just not there. You're just a smaller version of the shape that you always were. So even though you weigh less and even though you're technically smaller, you're still feeling soft and fluffy and not the way that you want to look, right? Like a lot of us look at women online and we're like, oh my God, like goals, right? And the truth is that those women have spent intentional years building muscle. So I'm not saying that you need to go spend years building muscle, but I'm just saying, don't be scared to do a build phase. So in our build phase, we're going to be eating in a small caloric surplus. And the reason we want to eat in a small caloric surplus is to minimize the amount of fat that's going to be gained, right? And I think a build phase has kind of gained a bad rep online because it's often referred to as a bulk. And like for starters, obviously that terminology just sounds terrible. It already scares you before you even get into it, right? You think of getting bulky and that's the last thing any of us want. And a lot of the times people will just eat mass amounts of food, do something called a dirty bulk, which means they can just eat whatever, whenever, for the sake of getting more calories, for the sake of building muscle. And that is not the way that we are doing things around here. We want to do a slight caloric surplus, which is going to be anything from like 200 to maybe 400 calories max above your maintenance. And without this extra fuel, you're not going to be able to recover well enough to be able to break down this muscle mass and rebuild it bigger and stronger. And then, of course, in this phase, we're also going to be strength training, but strength training with intent. We're going to be training to failure. We're going to be using progressive overload, and you are going to be training with the intent of building muscle. Sleep and recovery are also incredibly important in this phase as well. And bonus tip is that when you are in a build phase, obviously you're building muscle, which is going to improve your metabolic function, increase your metabolic rate. And then when you have a higher functioning metabolism, that is just going to make fat loss way easier down the road when you get to that phase. So even though it seems a little bit backwards to be focusing on a build phase when the ultimate goal for you is to become leaner, you can see how taking this path is going to get you to that end result more effectively and get you to look the way that you want to look and to get you closer to that desired body in the end game. So now that your metabolism is thriving, your hormones are thriving, your gut health is thriving, your energy is at a peak, you are feeling like a 10 out of 10, you have built some muscle mass, now it is time for a strategic fat loss phase. And this means we are going to be eating in a caloric deficit. However, because we spent that time raising your metabolic rate so that your baseline calories are much higher than they were when we started this whole process, you don't have to go into such an extreme deficit to see great results. And this is going to allow us to protect and maintain as much muscle mass as possible during this process, while also focusing on optimal performance and recovery, ultimately giving you better results of the fat loss phase. And your fat loss phase is not a phase we want to be living in. Unlike your metabolic priming phase and your build phase, which you can spend long periods of time in and it can actually have a benefit, your fat loss phase is something that we want to be short, strategic, and it is designed to reveal the work that we put in those other phases. And the longest we typically want to stay in a fat loss phase is 12 to 16 weeks, especially without using tools like refeeds and diet breaks. And this is because your metabolism is going to start to downregulate, like we were talking about in the beginning, right? You're going to experience something called metabolic adaptation, which is going to make your deficit less effective. And this is also the time period where you're going to start to see some of these negative health symptoms, things like higher stress response, hormonal imbalances, issues with your gut health. And this is primarily going to be due to the prolonged stress on the body. And this is going to have a downstream effect on your hormones, on your gut, and how you're feeling overall on a day-to-day basis. So something I want you to really remember is that fat loss works so much better and more efficiently when we've taken the time to do these two phases prior. This is when women start to see real lasting change because they've laid the solid foundation and their body was primed and ready to lose fat. They didn't just jump into a fat loss phase expecting their body to be ready and to respond. They put in the time and the work to prepare to make sure that their body was going to respond. And when you hit the end of your fat loss phase, right, like this isn't the end. It's not like, oh, I hit my goal and like, I'm just going to continue living like this, right? Now we need to reverse back up to your natural maintenance calories. So this is kind of taking you back to that metabolic priming phase again, going through that reverse diet phase again, back to your maintenance calories, which leads us to our next phase and our final phase, which I like to call the lifestyle phase, but it is typically known as a maintenance phase. And this is probably the most underrated phase. And while I said the build is my favorite because I love to see women get strong and build muscle and shape and feel so confident in themselves, and that really does come through in that phase, this is the phase that actually allows you to live your life and enjoy it without feeling out of control or like you're ruining all your progress, where we maintain our results. And I know maintenance sounds so boring. It's like, who just wants to stay the same? But the idea is that once you achieve a body that you feel confident in and you're happy with, isn't the goal to maintain that and to just feel good like that for the rest of our life? Especially being able to maintain that and feel great while navigating things like weddings, birthdays, vacations, right? How many times do we get so stressed out because we're not in a place where we feel confident going to any of those events, and we feel like we need to prepare for those events because we haven't gotten to a place where we've been able to maintain the results that we've ever achieved. So that's why I'm saying that this phase is super underrated, because if you are able to implement this phase properly and you're really able to change your lifestyle, right? I call it the lifestyle phase. You're able to integrate your lifestyle to maintain your results after putting in all of that work through your metabolic priming, your build, your fat loss, and now you just get to live your life in the body that you built, that you love. Tell me that's not amazing. So this is the phase where we're spending time really solidifying, eating, moving, living in a way that keeps you thriving. And the truth is, if you don't master maintenance, you will always be yo-yoing. And even though it might seem a little bit boring, this is really where long-term success is actually made. Within this phase, there's a lot of different things that you can implement and focus on, right? Like obviously understanding what type of workouts you should be doing to maintain your results and to support your health, as well as eating practices, right? Some people continue to track calories and macronutrients and, follow the 80-20 rule, and their goal is to hit their maintenance calories. Other people start to implement intuitive eating practices, right? And naturally, after going through all of these phases, you would have enough experience with food tracking and making food choices, hopefully, that you have learned so much about quality nutrition and foundational nutritional habits. But even with that being said, you don't want to jump into an intuitive eating plan right off the bat. Although that hopefully, if your body is functioning optimally at this point, right, and your hunger hormones, your stress hormones, your sex hormones, all your hormones are functioning in the way that they should be, and you've developed an intuitive connection with your body, right, and you're actually mentally present in the moment and can tap into that, then you should theoretically be able to follow intuitive eating by blending those two things, right? This education and experience that you have gone through with the intuitive relationship with your body and really understanding how to eat intuitively to support it, right? But for a lot of people, it really is a process. So I like to do this by starting to have clients gradually taper off with introducing like one intuitive eating day per week. And, after a while, 2, and then 3. And then after a while, they're only tracking like maybe 1 day a week just to make sure that they're hitting like loosely the protein goal and the calorie goal that they want to be hitting for maintenance. So the big question mark, right? How do you know what phase you should be in? So there's a couple questions you need to ask yourself. And I've actually created a quiz that will take you through a series of questions and recommend what phase is best suited for you right now based on where you're at and what your goals are. And that if you take that quiz, it will also give you the option to book a free lifestyle audit where I will give you customized advice as to the first steps to take in that process. So if you are interested in that, head to the description and go do that. I'm going to be offering like up to like probably 20 free audits. So yeah, go snag one if you want one and take the quiz so you can find out where you should be focusing your time and your energy. But just a couple quick questions to consider right now, right? When we're talking about what phase. So one of the first and foremost questions I want you to ask is, what has your focus been? Have you been dieting for months or years without much progress? Because if that's the case, then you probably need a metabolic priming phase first. My next question is, do you have the desire to like tone up or firm up or have more muscle definition? And you've never focused intentionally on building muscle, like I said earlier, like actually intentionally followed a muscle building plan, eating with enough food and recovering enough and all of these things that we talked about? The answer is yes, you want that, but no, you haven't. Then chances are you need to focus on doing a maybe metabolic priming phase and then a build phase and then going from there. The next question I have is like, is your metabolism healthy? Have you been eating 2,000 plus calories for more than the last 12 weeks, right? Do you track your food already? Do you know that you're eating in a surplus? Like maybe you know, like even though maybe you're not eating the healthiest foods, maybe you know you're eating a crap ton of calories because you're eating McDonald's 3 times a day, right? In this case, you're probably more than able to move directly into a fat loss phase because that metabolic intake is already very high. And then just naturally cleaning up your lifestyle and your health habits alongside the deficit will make a big difference for you. And then once you've lost some of the weight, you can focus like going back into the build and building some muscle mass. And then the last question is, maybe your goal isn't aesthetic focused and maybe you just want to perform well and you want to feel really great energy and you want to feel like present and like mobile and like you can play with your kids and keep up. Then bringing your calories into a maintenance phase and just finding a way to maintain that and live a healthy lifestyle without focusing on losing weight, building muscle, maybe it's just creating the healthiest lifestyle phase for you, is where you need to channel your energy. And I just want to remind you that there's no shame in any of these phases. And every single one of these phases has its pros and its cons. And each one is part of building the body and the life that you want to set you up for success long-term. So the last thing I want to leave you with is just saying, I know it's hard. I know it's hard sometimes, to mentally push past what you want in the moment to make a decision that's going to be better for the future version of you, and maybe putting your fat loss goal on the back burner temporarily so that you can focus, like I said, on improving your health and building some muscle mass so that you can get the body that you ultimately want. And while it might be frustrating because you want that right now, and for a lot of us, like this is something that you've wanted for a really long time and haven't achieved yet. So if you feel like you've put years into like wanting this outcome and it hasn't happened, you feel really anxious about wanting that as soon as possible, right? But I promise you that if you keep going through the same cycles that you've been going through for however long, 1 year from now, you're more than likely going to still be stuck in the exact same place where you could take the next year to go through all of these seasons that we just talked about and feel and look like a completely different person at the end of it. If you are always chasing fat loss, but you are skipping your priming phase, your building phase, and your maintenance phases, you are always going to end up feeling burnt out. You're going to plateau and you're going to stay frustrated with your body. But when you commit to going through all these phases and doing them properly, although it might feel a little bit uncomfortable, you're going to build the body that you want. You're going to have optimized health, a healthy metabolism, healthy hormones, a healthy gut, and feel 10 times better from the inside out. You'll have the energy and the confidence that you've been chasing, and you'll actually be able to maintain it long term and not have to continue to go through this cycle like a hamster on a wheel. So I hope this episode was a light bulb moment for you. And if you enjoyed it, screenshot it, share it on your story, send it to a friend. I would love for you to spread the word and help educate other women just like you. And if you're curious to know what phase you should be in, go check out the quiz in the description, lock in your free audit, and I will give you personalized advice. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you in the next one.